Hello and a warm welcome to our first podcast in the Conveyancing Connections series of PCS Pods. I'm Kate Forsdike and I'm a Director of PCS Legal, and today I'm joined by Andrew McColl from AMSurveys, who's going to answer some of our questions regarding surveys when purchasing a property. So hi Andrew, thanks for joining us today.
Well, hi Kate. I have to say it's my first podcast ever, so I'm a podcast virgin.
Hopefully we'll look after you anyway.
Good.
So let's get started. So really the obvious question is what is a survey?
Right. Well, a survey essentially is a physical inspection of the property, and our primary role is to say, look, is it structurally sound or isn't it? Is it weathertight? Isn't it? And one of the reasons that I think it's essential, well, I am biased, I am a surveyor, that's how I make my living, is look, that people buy properties, they don't buy them every day. They spend 20 minutes looking at the property and they make a major decision. Well, guess what? Houses are sold as seen. You basically have no consumer rights whatsoever. Yeah. And if you get it wrong, well, it's buyer beware with it all. So it is essential to have a more informed decision in what you're buying. You're going to be paying that mortgage for the next 25 years with it all, and you want to make sure you have a property that you can sell again. It's not some kind of defective build. It is an investment that you want to make sure that you keep safe. And the thing about a survey is, although surveys can tend to focus on the negative at times, we're not here to throw a spanner in the works. We're here to offer positive solutions, let you know exactly what you're buying. And if I could sum it up in one word, it's not one word, one sentence, it's peace of mind. That's what you need.
Okay. So what does a survey typically cover?
Well, I'd like to say that a survey covers everything. It is, as I said, a physical inspection of the outside, the inside of the property. We would, for example, report on roof coverings, the roof void itself. We get in that loft and crawl about looking for woodworm and mice and all sorts of things like that. And we look at the property for, are there physical alterations? Has it been extended? Is there dampness? Is there potential dampness issues? Health and safety, is there asbestos about? What about the outbuildings? What about the garden? Is there Japanese knotweed or triffids floating around? But the one thing I will say is that to manage expectations, a survey is not invasive. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to start ripping up floorboards or cutting holes in encasements, but we are there to ensure that you are making an informed decision, that you have a report in plain English, easy to read, plenty of photographs, none of this gobbledygook with it all. And lastly, we're also the eyes and ears of your conveyancer, so we're providing essential information for them as well. So hopefully that we make the whole of the process run a lot more smoothly.
Brilliant. Okay, so what are the different types of surveys that you can get?
Right, well, that is a pretty long list there. The first thing that I will say is a valuation by a bank is not a survey. There's a common misconception that 80% of people think that once the bank has done a valuation, that a survey's done, I don't need to do any more. Your bank is not doing a survey on that property. A valuation does not give you any consumer protection whatsoever. And an interesting thing is that 60% of valuations are carried out by what we call desktop. So they don't even go there. I mean, nowadays there's enough information in supercomputers of past sales and Rightmove and everything else. So 40% that they will go there. And actually the poor corporate valuer probably does 5 or 6 valuations a day. So that they may be there 15 minutes, they may be there half an hour, and there's a big disclaimer there saying that it is not a survey. It's just purely for their own internal tick boxes of, is it good to lend money on? And actually, if you default, actually, can they sell it quickly, get their money back, basically?
Okay.
Oh, what type of surveys? Can you forgot? Well, there's two things here. Is it a new build house? And there is a specific survey for that. But I think that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Most people will buy a property that is, 10 years old, 100 years old. And there are, I think, three main types of survey, or mainstream types of survey. The best known is probably the Home Buyers Report. And it's probably the best known because it's been around for over 30 years. It's what we call a level 2 survey. It's designed for your basic sort of property, as it were. Certainly not one that is over 80 or 100 years old. And if there's been physical alterations to the property, it's not really the survey that you should have. I'm not a great fan of them personally, but they will do what you want them to do.
Okay.
At the other end of the scale, you have the building survey. Now, the building survey is what we call a level 3 survey, and it is the most expensive of all the survey types. And the reason for this is you're paying for a lot of in-depth advice on putting major problems right.
Okay.
So if it was a rambling old Victorian wreck with mushrooms growing up the walls, big cracks everywhere, this is certainly the survey for you. Or if it's it's a high-end property with lots of grounds, it's probably the one that you want. So there'll be a lot of detailed advice in there. There is an alternative that sits in the middle that's not so mainstream, but it's certainly my favourite type of survey is the home condition survey. Okay. That is a level 3 survey. So it's a level 3 inspection, it's a level 2 report. So it's the best of all worlds. But it's very, very, very consumer friendly, lots of pictures, lots of detailed, there is a lot of generic advice in there with it all. It also includes insurance rebuild documents, but it's like anything. We can offer people whatever survey that they want or need. I personally will always talk to a client 15, 20 minutes, so I've got an understanding of what they're buying, what their concerns are, their timelines, their future plans. And then from there, I can give better advice on what would be the most suitable type of survey.
Great stuff. So how much is a typical survey for a house purchase, or does it kind of differ depending on what type of survey you have and also what property you're buying, I suppose?
Yes, and unfortunately it's a how long is a piece of string question with it all. One thing I would say, though, you don't have to pay the most amount of money to get a good survey. It's, you don't have to say, I need the full all singing and dancing building survey. Let you into a little secret. All surveys are structural surveys.
Okay,
That's what you pay us to do. Is it structurally sound or not structurally sound? Because I occasionally get people say, I have to have the full structural.
Yeah.
Well, the full structural, people normally refer to that as the building survey, and the building survey is the most expensive in the suite. And the last thing that I personally will ever do is say that you have to give me the most amount of money, because we all have to have this perception of value for money. And the last thing I would ever want is someone saying, actually, that was an awful lot of money for something that told me, nothing. We don't need that. That doesn't get you recommendations and referrals in the future.
Okay, so you touched on it earlier. So you would definitely recommend that I would still need a survey, even if my mortgage company are doing a valuation report?
Absolutely, you need a survey with it. Occasionally, I do get people saying, well, it's okay, my dad can go and have a look at it, or I know a builder. Well, when it hits the fan, okay, they're not going to take the responsibility for it. And very occasionally, I do get a naughty estate agent that says, you don't need a survey. Well, stick it in writing. No one ever will. You need a survey because, as we said earlier on, houses are totally sold as seen, no consumer rights whatsoever. And I think we said one of the main reasons is you don't want an insurance company to make an excuse not to pay out if you hit these problems. And I think that peace of mind, absolute peace of mind, it is the most important reason for it. And actually, I didn't answer the other question properly. How much is a survey?
Yeah.
I think that surveys probably start around the £500 region, depending whether it's a flat or a small house, and obviously it will get higher and higher. I think a full building survey on a big Victorian 5-bedroom detached house with land and outbuildings could be as much as £1,200.
Yeah.
But if you're paying a couple of £1 million for a property,
that's exactly what I was going to say.
It's a drop in the ocean.
That's right. And I think even if you're buying a property that's £100,000, you know, to have a survey done for £500 or whatever is a no-brainer, really, isn't it? So,
well, I'd hate for someone to be stuck actually paying a mortgage for 30 years for a house that they can't sell.
Definitely. So if I had a survey done and there were some issues that have been highlighted in it, what could I do after that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. People don't want to move in and get surprises, and I've found that very rarely will a survey or issues that have been found put someone off from actually buying a house. So they can use the information if need be for some negotiation. I mean, when you make an offer on a property, it is on what you reasonably know about. So if we suddenly say to you, well, do you know what, there is a woodworm infestation, the treatment for this is probably about £2,000, you know, that's not the end of the world. And if you have a reasonable buyer and a reasonable seller, they might be able to discuss it. I think half the time that the people selling the houses don't always know that there is a problem. We all become a bit blind in our own house about the sloping floor and the creaky, you know, floorboards or the door that doesn't shut properly, and you know, sometimes there is actually a fine line between character and defect with properties.
That's great. So it's not just a report and then I'll get sent the report and nothing else. So surveys are available.
We will take phone calls from now to evermore and give you that advice, because actually good service, good old-fashioned customer service gets you recommendations left, right and centre. And, you know, at this point, I would like to say that when we met, what, 14 years ago? Something like that.
Showing my age now.
And from just giving, never advertising, good customer service, there's 6 of us now.
Yeah.
And that's been organic growth from getting it right.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Really good. Well, you must be doing something right anyway, as they say. So is the survey, is that just for me, or do I have to disclose it to anybody else?
Well, there are no rules, really. I would say to anybody, look, this survey is for you, okay, as the buyer, for your informed choice. I would always say, give it to your conveyancer. The conveyancer needs this because we have a small section called Section C, which will highlight issues that the conveyancer will or may need to know about. They might not know the fact that there's a big extension being put on, or walls taken out, or there's a loft conversion that shouldn't be there, or there's boundary issues where we go there and say, well, hang on, this isn't right. Well, the conveyancer does need to know about these things. And we'll always liaise with them. So it's important that you give it to the conveyancer. Should you give it to your estate agent? Should you give it to the person you're buying a house from? Well, I'd say no, is the answer to that. If you play poker, don't give all your cards away.
No, that's right.
But sections of the report are very, very useful for negotiation if need be.
Yeah, I think from a conveyancing point of view, it's definitely a good idea to send it to your conveyancer. I have seen surveys before of, you know, it's contained information that wasn't disclosed by the seller previously, and sort of other issues have occurred, so that's really good to do that. So, what are the differences in surveyors? Can you get different types of surveyors? Or
Well, I think it's one of these things where you get good and bad in every trade and every profession. There's a few things here. I think, I hate to say this, but anyone could call themselves a surveyor.
Okay.
It's not a protected title. It's important that your surveyor is obviously properly accredited with the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors or the Chartered Association of Building Engineers or the Residential Property Surveyors Association, or all three, or some of them. What else about surveyor? I think it's recommendation. I think the recommendation is like anything else. Is that person recommended to you? I'm personally a great believer in the small practice surveyor rather than the corporate surveyor. Corporate surveyors, they have to do quite a lot of surveys, and certainly you wouldn't have personal details and personal numbers of the surveyor that you can pick up and say, hi John, hi Bill, hi Lee, AMSurveys. I have this thing that I'm concerned about, and or a small crack has appeared. We'll always give that help and advice over things, and then from there, good service. We get good business because we get referred as being good, honest professionals. And, we don't recommend, nothing's incentivised money-wise, so we're not going to recommend builders and painters or anything like that to you. We'll just give you good, honest advice.
Brilliant. Okay. So how would I find a surveyor?
Right. Can I give a real shameless plug here?
You can indeed. Go for it.
Right. Well, my name's Andrew from AMSurveys, so that's amsurveys.co.uk, and we cover the whole of the southeast of England. There's 5 or 6 of us working in the team, and we really do like to think that we give that good old-fashioned service that you don't see nowadays. However, you might say, well, actually, I live in Belfast, or I live in Bognor. Well, I'm going to say unfortunately. Fortunately, I'm also the director of the Residential Property Surveyors Association panel. We have a couple of hundred independent small practice surveyors around the country. So if you needed a survey doing anywhere in the middle of Wales, I can sort that out, no problem whatsoever. So that's the Residential Property Surveyors Association .org.uk, not-for-profit organisation. But basically, any type of survey or any survey advice you need, find me. Here's my shameless mobile plug. It's 07 920 460 811. And if I don't answer when I'm on a call, I will always call back. And I'm more than happy to give whatever help and advice we possibly can. Just to say, Ashley, that personally, if I give a quote out, I never chase anything up because I hate that kind of thing myself.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not a timeshare salesman. I'll give honest advice, email it off, and then if somebody wants to come back and say, yes, hey, that's good, then absolutely great.
Brilliant. Okay, so when do you think is the best time to instruct a surveyor?
Right. Well, you probably are better answering that question.
Yeah, to be fair,
but what I would always say to anybody is, look, if you're buying this with a mortgage, make sure that the valuation's been done and the lender is happy to lend. The last thing that I want to do is go and inspect the property, okay, and then you come back and say, well, the lender's not going to lend because, I don't know, I couldn't get all my pay slips in order or something like that. There are occasions in very heated markets where actually, in fact, I had one the other day in London, and they will not take the property off the market until a surveyor has booked a survey.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I had that yesterday. Nice big property, and they asked us to go ahead, and then complained a little bit that actually it hadn't been booked than half an hour. And I was still on the call. But anyway, that's booked and they're happy. But what's your views?
I think if I put my conveyancing hat on, I think really the best time would be after we've received draft contracts from the seller's solicitor, because it's at that point then that the chain's been formed. The seller's completed all their paperwork and sent it to us, and it's at that point we'd also order the searches. So maybe between that time will be a good time, because you still want time for you to be able to go and do the survey and produce the report for our client to look at it before exchange of contracts. So
well, exactly. You don't want to leave it last minute. And by the way, that's the first time I've seen your conveyancing hat, and
you like it?
Yeah, it does. It really
good.
It really suits you.
I wear it quite often, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
So. And lastly, have you got any sort of tips for buyers at all if they were looking at properties?
Oh, where do you begin with tips?
Tips and tricks.
Where do you buy with tips? Yeah, I think, okay, on tips and tricks, please look at the property more than once. The amount of times that I hear we only went to the property once before buying it, and I think that no, you need to go more than once, because first time rose-coloured glasses, second time you then start asking the questions and then thinking more realistically about will that suit, can I put a home office in that bedroom, or everybody's different with things, but it's important to go a few times, because if you're going to get cold feet, do it early on in the process.
Yeah,
don't do it later on. And I think it's also important even to go at the property at different times. You don't necessarily have to go in there, but go and see what it's like on there's a pub around the corner. Go and see what it's like at 10 o'clock at night. Just go and there isn't any rowdiness or
really good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully you've given our listeners some food for thought, definitely, and hopefully your first podcast experience has been a good one.
Okay, can you unlock the door now?
I can do, yeah. You're allowed to leave now. Thank you.